Affinity Photo has a useful feature whereby you can instantly create a custom brush from a layer selection. You can create both image and intensity brushes, so I'll show you how to do both. Let's take a basic example here. We might want to extract this cloud to use as a brush which we can stamp onto our landscape photographs or use for compositing. So first, let's move across to the Layers panel. We only have one layer in this document, but if you already have several layers in your document, just make sure you have the correct pixel layer selected first. Now we will use the Selection Brush tool here, increase the brush width, and make a rough selection of the cloud. Like so. Then we will go to Refine on the context toolbar. I'll just increase my brush width and then just drag over most of the detail here. Then release the mouse button to matte it. Finally, on my output here, I'll choose New Layer and click Apply. Okay, let's rename this cutout to Cloud 1. And up here, on the Brushes panel, I will create a new category and rename it to Clouds. So with my cloud layer selected here, I can once again go to the menu and choose New Brush from Selection. And this creates a new image brush from my cloud layer. Now I've set up a test document, so I can quickly create a new pixel layer, get the paintbrush tool, select my new cloud brush, and start stamping my cloud on. And I can use the left and right keys to rotate the brush nozzle as well. But the resolution of this brush is quite large. It's over 4,000 pixels, and we might not need such a large brush because it might cause performance issues on lower specification machines, and it will also increase the file size of the brush category. So just going back to our initial document, we can go to Document, Resize Document, and we can resample this to something much smaller, perhaps 1,800 pixels wide. Now, if we create the brush again, it's a much smaller resolution, so it will be faster to use on more complex documents, and it will result in a smaller file size if the brush category is exported. And we can right-click the original brush and delete it. We can also create intensity brushes. So these are brushes that are just black and white and they contain no color. And we do this from mask layers. So here is a more abstract approach. I've taken a photo of the ground here, and we're going to use the selection brush, once again, to make a random selection of its contents. I'll enable soft edges on the context toolbar up here to anti-alias the selection edges. Here's a tip when you're dealing with bright imagery and you can't see the selection marquee very well. Toggle into Quick Mask mode using Q. This gives me a much clearer idea of the kind of selection that I'm making. Having made my selection, I'll use Q again to come out of Quick Mask mode and create a mask layer using this option down here. Then I'll deselect with Command D on Mac or Control D on Windows. Let's create a new brush category, and we will rename it Texture Masks. Now here's where it gets interesting. If I select the mask layer and create a brush from it, you'll notice we now have a monochrome intensity brush. This is fine, but look at the resolution. It's using the bounds of the entire document. There may be circumstances where you would want this, but at the moment we don't. So what we need to do is have an active selection of the mask. We could have created this brush before deselecting. In fact, if we roll back to the history step, just before deselect when we still have that selection marquee, then create a brush from the selection. We now have a smaller brush which uses the bounds of the selection and not the entire document. Now, if you have already deselected, like we did beforehand, this is not a problem. You can simply command-click on the layer if you're on Mac, or use Control-click on Windows to create an active selection of the mask. Then, once again, choose New Brush from Selection, and I'll just deselect again. So making brushes from textures is one of my favourite approaches for creating brushes for masking, since you can double-click to bring up the brush editor, then experiment with the dynamics. So I may add some rotation jitter, some scatter jitter as well, and also some size jitter, which I just need to reassign to a random controller rather than pressure. Then I can just hide this layer, turn on my black fill layer, add a mask, get the paintbrush tool, and test out my brush, like so. Finally then, here is another scenario that you may run into. This is an architectural visualization, and we're adding some tree cutouts to the scene. So I'll just go out to my File Explorer, get this tree cutout, and place it in. Then just use the Move tool to scale it down. And to blend it into the scene tonally, I'll just enable this option here, Insert inside the selection. And very quickly, add a brightness and contrast adjustment. Then bring the contrast and brightness down. Now at some point we may decide we want to create brush versions of the trees so we can easily stamp them into other visualizations. At the moment, if I create a new brush category, rename it to trees, then select my tree cutout, the new brush from selection option is grayed out. And this is because it's an image layer. Image layers are effectively containers for image information and are rasterized during the presentation stage. We need to actually be working with raster pixel data, so we need to rasterize this layer first. With the layer selected, we can do this either through the layer menu or by right-clicking on either the layer itself on the canvas or on the layers panel, like so. So we'll just choose rasterize, and you'll see that's now a pixel layer. So this time, when we go to this menu option, it's no longer grayed out. So we can choose New Brush from Selection, and there is our tree. We can just edit this by double-clicking, and let's add some slight size jitter, again with a random controller, and across on the General tab, just increase the spacing. And also we can change the initial size of this brush, so we might choose 1024 pixels. Then we can create a new pixel layer, get the paintbrush tool, and start stamping. And that concludes our look at creating brushes from pixel and mask selections. Hope you found it useful, and thank you for watching.